I was excited about Ethan's 5th birthday. I woke up early, with a light heart and a smile on my face, ready to make his day special. I grabbed the box of cupcakes that Hannah and I had carefully chosen from the neighborhood bakery. Each one was decorated with cartoon characters Ethan loved. I arrived at Central Park carrying the cupcakes, and the sight of the place filled me with satisfaction. The tables were adorned with colorful balloons and shimmering streamers, and a large banner read, "Happy Birthday, Ethan." Children were running around, filling the air with laughter. Chris, my best friend since college, was there helping to organize the games. He had always been a reliable guy, someone I could count on for anything. As he guided the kids in the sack race, I couldn't help but smile. Hannah, my wife, was overseeing the decorations. She looked radiant, tending to every detail to ensure everything was perfect. "Hey, love," I called out, waving my free hand. "The cupcakes are here." She smiled at me, that smile that always made me feel like everything was right in the world. "Great, Jack. Let's put them on the main table." As I helped arrange the cupcakes, I noticed Hannah seemed restless, casting furtive glances at Chris. I didn't dwell on it at the time, attributing it to the stress of organizing. Suddenly, I noticed Chris and Hannah discreetly moving to a more secluded area of the park. My curiosity was piqued. I left the cupcakes and the children in the care of a friend and followed them, keeping a distance that allowed me to observe unnoticed. My heart began to race. When I finally found them, hidden behind a large tree, I was stunned by what I saw. Chris and Hannah were kissing. It wasn't an innocent kiss, but passionate, filled with desire. My world shattered in that moment. I felt like the ground had disappeared from beneath my feet. The pain was physical, as if someone had stabbed a knife into my chest. My hands trembled, and my face burned with anger and betrayal. I wanted to scream, to confront them right there, but I held back. Ethan's party was happening just a few meters away. I couldn't ruin his day. I took a deep breath, trying to regain some control over my emotions. I returned to the party, forcing a smile on my face. The children were still playing, oblivious to the whirlwind of emotions I was experiencing. "Hey, Jack, everything okay?" asked one of the parents as I tried to appear calm. "Yeah, everything's great," I lied, the bitter taste of the words in my mouth. I spent the rest of the party in a daze, my smile now a mask hiding the anguish. Every time I looked at Chris and Hannah, a new wave of pain hit me. They returned to the party as if nothing had happened, laughing and playing with the children, including Ethan. When the party finally ended and everyone began to say their goodbyes, I felt exhausted, not physically but emotionally. I knew that sight wouldn't be easy to forget. What to do now? Confront Hannah and Chris immediately? Keep the secret to protect Ethan? My son's birthday party was supposed to be a day of joy, but it had turned into a nightmare from which I didn't know how to wake up. The night was torment. While Ethan slept peacefully in the room next door, I tossed and turned in bed, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Chris kissing Hannah returned like a knife in my chest. That kiss, so intimate and filled with passion, made my stomach churn. I stared at the ceiling, searching for answers that didn't come. Where did it all go wrong? I remembered meeting Chris in college. He was my confidant, my partner in all things. We shared dreams, frustrations, and eventually, every triumph. It was Chris who introduced me to Hannah, the woman who would become the love of my life. How could everything change so drastically? The next morning, the sun seemed to mock me as it streamed through the window. I got up, determined to confront Hannah. She was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast as if nothing had happened. The betrayal seemed so distant in that domestic moment, but the pain in my chest was a constant reminder. "Hannah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me, surprised by the seriousness in my tone. "Sure, Jack. What's wrong?" "I saw you yesterday," I started, feeling a lump in my throat. "I saw you and Chris at the park." For a moment, Hannah's expression remained unchanged, but then a shadow of panic crossed her face. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I saw you kissing." My voice trembled with anger and hurt. Hannah sighed, looking away. "Jack, this isn't what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think. Betrayal." She hesitated for a moment before finally admitting, "Yes, Chris and I are together, but things between us haven't been easy, Jack. Our marriage has been troubled for years." "Troubled?" I almost laughed bitterly. "And the solution is to get involved with my best friend? I didn't want it to be like this," she said, tears beginning to fall down her face. "But Chris understands me in a way you don't anymore." The pain on her face seemed genuine, but it didn't lessen my own anguish. "How could you do this, Hannah? And with Chris? He's like a brother to me." "I know, Jack, I know, but I felt so alone, so disconnected from you. And Chris was there." "Stop," I interrupted. "I don't want to hear any more excuses." The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't know what to do next. The urge to confront Chris was overwhelming, but I decided I needed time to think. Over the next few days, I observed Chris and Hannah discreetly, trying to understand the depth of the betrayal. Every moment I saw them together, laughing or exchanging knowing glances, felt like a stab. The pain was almost unbearable, but I knew I needed to be strategic. I couldn't let anger consume me and cloud my judgment. Yet with each new discovery, the betrayal became more concrete. Small gestures, messages exchanged in secret, quick phone calls. Everything pointed to a relationship much deeper than I had imagined. Chris, my loyal friend, was building a life with the woman I loved, and it devastated me. Ethan, oblivious to it all, remained my light. Every smile, every laugh, reminded me of what truly mattered. I couldn't let this betrayal destroy his innocence. I needed to be strong, for him and for myself. Still, every night, lying in bed, the pain returned with full force. Memories of happy times with Hannah and Chris mingled with this new reality of betrayal and distrust. I needed a plan, something that would allow me to handle the situation fairly and protect my son. And so, with that resolve, I fell asleep, knowing that the final confrontation was approaching. The sun had barely risen, and I was already standing in front of the divorce lawyer's office, my heart tight and mind swirling. I rang the bell, and a friendly receptionist led me to Dr. Roberto Mendez's office. He was a middle-aged man with an attentive and understanding gaze, seeming to grasp the depth of my suffering without me needing to say a word. "Good morning, Jack. Please have a seat," he said, pointing to a brown leather chair in front of his desk. "Thank you, Dr. Mendez. I don't even know where to begin," I replied, settling into the chair. "Let's start from the beginning. What brought you here?" he asked, his voice gentle and reassuring. I took a deep breath and told him everything. From the moment I saw Chris kissing Hannah in the park to my wife's confession the following night. The lawyer listened attentively, jotting down notes occasionally. When I finished, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "I understand, Jack. The first thing we need to do is gather concrete evidence of the infidelity. That will be crucial to ensure you don't come out disadvantaged in the divorce," Dr. Mendez explained. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and despair. He gave me some guidance on how to document interactions between Hannah and Chris without their knowledge. I left the office with a plan in mind, determined to protect my son and myself from this devastating betrayal. Over the following days, I continued to play my role as a husband and father, but now with a vigilant eye on every move Hannah and Chris made. Chris continued to visit our home, maintaining the facade of a loyal and helpful friend. Every fake smile, every gesture of camaraderie, felt like a stab in my heart. One day, while at work, I received a message informing me that an important meeting had been canceled. I decided to seize the opportunity to surprise Ethan at school. I parked the car and walked into the courtyard, eager to see my son. However, what I saw left me paralyzed. Chris and Hannah were together, engaged in an intimate conversation. Anger and despair washed over me, and without thinking twice, I approached them. "So this is what you do while I'm at work?" I shouted, my voice trembling with fury. Chris turned pale, surprised. "Jack, it's not what you think. Not what I think. I saw you at the park. I saw the kiss. And now, here at the school? How could you do this to me? How could you do this to Ethan?" My voice echoed across the courtyard, drawing curious glances. Before Chris could respond, my phone rang. It was Dr. Mendez. I answered quickly, trying to control my breathing. "Jack, I need to speak with you urgently. I've discovered something important about the marriage contract," he said, his tone serious. I'm in the middle of something right now, but I'll come as soon as I can," I replied, trying not to lose my composure. I hung up the phone and looked at Chris and Hannah. "This isn't over yet. Don't think you'll get away with this," I said before walking away. I drove to the lawyer's office, my heart pounding erratically. When I arrived, Dr. Mendez greeted me with a grave look. "Jack, there's a clause in the marriage contract that could benefit Hannah in the divorce, unless you have concrete proof of infidelity," he explained. The news hit me like a punch to the stomach. I needed more evidence, something irrefutable. I decided to hire a private detective to gather more evidence about Hannah and Chris's affair. This was my only chance to ensure justice was served. The detective, a discreet and efficient man, began following Chris and Hannah's movements. Within days, he uncovered something even more disturbing. Chris and Hannah were planning to run away together, leaving me and Ethan behind. The news left me devastated, but it also gave me the determination I needed to confront this situation once and for all. Armed with the new evidence, I returned home and waited for Hannah. When she arrived, I showed her the photos and recordings. "You think you can run away and leave me and Ethan behind? Do you really think this will end well for you?" I asked, my voice firm and cold. Hannah tried to deny it, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but I was no longer willing to hear her lies. In that moment, I decided it was time to confront Chris once and for all. I had nothing left to lose. I was sitting in the kitchen, my head in my hands, when the phone rang. It was my lawyer, Mr. Morris. He always seemed to know when I was about to fall apart. I answered the phone, trying to control the agitation in my voice. "Jack, I have some news that could change things," he said, getting straight to the point. "What is it now, Morris?" I asked, trying not to sound desperate. "I've been reviewing your marriage contract and found a clause that could significantly benefit Hannah in the divorce, if you don't have concrete proof." My heart sank. Everything I had been doing, all the sleepless nights, seemed on the verge of falling apart. "What clause is that?" I asked, trying to contain my frustration. "It's a clause about adultery. If you can't irrefutably prove that she committed adultery, she could walk away with a good portion of what you have." I hung up the phone, feeling an even heavier weight on my shoulders. I needed more evidence, something that left no doubts. That's when I decided to hire a private detective. I called a friend who knew someone in the business, and within a few hours, I was sitting with the detective explaining the situation. "I need you to find out everything you can about their relationship," I requested. "I want solid proof, something I can use in court." The detective, a middle-aged man named Robert, nodded. "I'll do my best, Jack. This might take some time, but I'll find what you need." The following days were a mix of anxiety and hope. Robert kept me updated regularly, and each new discovery felt like a punch to the gut. It was during one of these updates that he brought me the most devastating news. "Jack, I found out that Chris and Hannah are planning to run away together," he said, his voice grave. "Run away," I repeated, incredulous. "Yes, it seems they've been discussing it for some time. They plan to leave you and Ethan behind." Anger consumed me. I needed to confront Hannah with this new evidence. I waited until Ethan was asleep, then called Hannah into the living room. "Hannah, we need to talk," I said, trying to stay calm. She sat down on the couch, looking tense. "What now, Jack?" she asked with a sigh. "I know everything. I know you and Chris are planning to run away together." Hannah widened her eyes, surprised. "What? That's ridiculous. Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter who told me. I have proof," I retorted, showing her the photos and messages that Robert had obtained. She looked at the photos, her expression shifting from surprise to anger. "This is a misunderstanding, Jack. We're not planning to run away. The messages were taken out of context." "Taken out of context?" I shouted, losing patience. "How can you justify this? There are pictures of you together, messages talking about leaving everything behind." Hannah shook her head, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. "I swear, Jack, we're not planning to run away. I would never leave Ethan." I wanted to believe her, but the evidence was overwhelming. And even if she wasn't planning to run away, the betrayal was still there, clear as day. I couldn't live with this uncertainty, with this constant pain. I decided it was time to confront Chris. I had nothing left to lose. I called him and arranged to meet at the bar we used to frequent. He didn't suspect a thing, thinking it was a friendly chat, like old times. Little did he know I had a plan, and Detective Robert would be there to record everything. When I arrived at the bar, Chris was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. He smiled when he saw me, but I couldn't return the smile. I sat down and ordered a beer, trying to appear casual. "So, Jack, what did you want to talk about?" he asked, taking a sip of his drink. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Chris, I know about you and Hannah," I said, getting straight to the point. He froze, his expression changing from curiosity to shock. "What are you saying, Jack?" "I know about your affair. I know you've been together for months. And I know about your plans to run away." Chris tried to mask his reaction, but guilt was written all over his face. I'm sorry, Jack," he said, his voice faltering. I wanted to scream, to punch him right then and there, but I held back. I needed this confession recorded. "Why, Chris? You were my best friend. Why did you do this?" He lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. "I fell in love with her, Jack. It wasn't something we planned. It just happened. And you thought running away was the best solution? Leaving Ethan without a father?" I asked, my voice heavy with disbelief. He shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I know it was a mistake, a big mistake, but I love her, Jack. I can't imagine my life without her." I stood up, feeling there was nothing more to be said. "You've destroyed my life, Chris, and I'm going to make sure you pay for it." I walked out of the bar, leaving Chris behind, engulfed in his guilt. I had the recording, and with it, the proof I needed to ensure Hannah wouldn't get any benefits in the divorce. The battle was far from over, but at least now I had a fighting chance. I took a deep breath as I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror at the bar. The noise of glasses clinking and laughter in the background seemed distant, almost as if I were in another dimension. I splashed water on my face, trying to clear my mind before the most important meeting of my life. Chris was waiting for me at our usual corner table, where we used to discuss our college adventures and the challenges of adulthood. But today, things would be different. It was time for the truth. I returned to the table with determined steps, watching Chris raise his hand to call the waiter. "2 beers, Jack?" he asked with a carefree smile. I nodded, trying to stay calm while my heart raced in my chest. "Chris, we need to talk about something serious," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, a bit surprised but still relaxed. "Sure, man. What's going on?" he asked, picking up the beer that had just arrived. I took another deep breath. "I know about you and Hannah." Chris's expression instantly changed. The smile faded, and the color drained from his face. "Jack, Don't bother lying," I interrupted, keeping my gaze fixed on him. I saw you both at the park on Ethan's birthday, and I have more than that. I have proof." He swallowed hard, looking around as if searching for an escape. "Proof?" he muttered, his voice almost a whisper. I nodded, taking my phone out of my pocket and placing it on the table. "Yes, proof, and not just photos. I have recordings, conversations, everything documented." Chris nervously ran his hand through his hair. "Jack, I can explain." "Then explain," I challenged, crossing my arms. "I want to hear you say it." He hesitated for a moment before letting out a heavy sigh. I love Hannah, Jack. It wasn't something we planned. It just happened. And now we want to be together." A lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. "So, that's it? You plan to run away and leave Ethan and me behind?" Chris shook his head quickly. "It wasn't like that. We wanted to find a way to do this without hurting anyone." Anger bubbled inside me. "Without hurting anyone? How can you say that? You've destroyed our friendship, my marriage, and now you're trying to justify your actions as if they were noble." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off, raising my hand. "I've heard enough. I have everything recorded," I said, pointing to a small recorder hidden under the table. "Everything you've said will be handed over to my lawyer. Hannah won't benefit from anything in this divorce." Chris looked like he had been hit by a truck. "Jack, please don't do this. Think about Ethan." "Think about Ethan?" I repeated, incredulous. "I am thinking about him. That's why I'm doing this. He deserves to know that his father fought for him, that he didn't let other people's selfishness destroy his family." I stood up from the table, feeling a strange mix of triumph and sadness. "It's over, Chris. Our friendship, my marriage to Hannah. Everything." He tried to say something else, but I simply walked away, leaving him sitting there as his world crumbled around him. I exited the bar and found the detective waiting outside. I handed him the recorder, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "This should be enough," I said as he carefully stowed away the device. He nodded, tears burning my eyes. "Yes, it's enough." The court was swift and ruthless. With the evidence in hand, my lawyer secured custody of Ethan and nullified any attempt by Hannah to claim benefits. She and Chris were exposed for the traitors they were, and I, though devastated, felt a strange sense of relief. As I walked out of the courtroom hand in hand with Ethan, I looked up at the sky and felt that despite everything, there was a chance to start over. I had my son, my dignity, and a clear conscience, and that was all I needed to